All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started now. My name is Isaac Reichman. I'm the Director of Public Information at the City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection. Thank you all for joining today, and a big thank you to our many panelists and presenters today for taking some of your time for this webinar. Today's webinar is all about the Paycheck Protection Program and specifically how to apply. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and we will post it to our YouTube page. That's youtube.com/ChicagoBACP. We'll post it to our YouTube page following this webinar. So if there's any specific information you missed or any of your colleagues that you want to send this information to, we'll hopefully have it posted by tomorrow on our YouTube page. A big portion of today's webinar will also be to answer questions. We have all the content experts you need here with us today. So we ask if you can to please submit your questions into the chat function. Again, please use the chat here on WebEx for your questions. We're going to be answering some questions as they come through during the webinar, but mostly at the end. We're going to save a good amount of time for questions because we know there's a lot of detail here and there's a lot of specific questions that businesses have related to the Paycheck Protection Program, and we wanted to take this opportunity to get those questions answered. If we can move on to the next slide. Great, so today's agenda, again, my name is Isaac Reichman. I'm the Director of Public Information for Business Affairs and Consumer Protection, BACP. We are the licensing and regulatory wing of the City of Chicago government for businesses. We do kind of all things related to licensing and regulation for businesses. Part of what we do is a number of different workshops and webinars on a number of different topics, from COVID-19 regulations to how to start your business to today's how to get funding for your business through the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, we're not the content experts, and we're not the department that oversees the Paycheck Protection Program, which is why we're really, really glad to have Mark Ferguson and Carol Harris here from the Illinois Small Business Administration. They're going to start off by providing an overview of the Paycheck Protection Program, important dates, and really the basic information about what you need to know. And then once they're done, they're going to pass it off to the Illinois Bankers Association. We have Randy Hultgren and Ben Jackson here from the Illinois Bankers Association, and they have gathered 4 different banks here today to talk specifically about how to apply for the Paycheck Protection Program at their institutions. So we have BMO Harris, JPMorgan Chase, PNC Bank, and U.S. Bank. So the Ben Jackson from the Illinois Bankers Association will be holding a little bit of a panel from these different banks, and they're going to talk specifically about how to apply at their institutions. And then again, once all presenters are done with their presentation, we will have opportunity for questions. So I know there's a lot of content to get to. Elisa Sladzinska from my team is here, who's going to be moderating today's entire presentation, including the questions as they come through. So big thank you to her for organizing all this and for managing today's webinar. And without further ado, I'll pass it to Mark and Carol from the SBA. Mark and Carol, I'm not sure which one of you want to go first.
I think our Deputy District Director has it right now. Mark?
Yep, I do. Thank you, everybody, for inviting us to the BACP webinar here today. And I'm sorry, you caught me cleaning my glasses. Welcome to the Paycheck Protection Relaunch. Why is it a relaunch? This is the second crunch of money on payroll protection, and money's coming out. As you all know, as of December 27th, 2020, President Trump signed into legislation the Economic Aid Act for hard-hit businesses. So we got a little bit jiggy with it. We learned when I say got a little bit jiggy with it, we made some improvements, in my opinion, that will go ahead and help us cover a few more folks that may have been left out of the last tranche of monies. Can we go to the next slide, please? Or do I? Okay. Now, the agenda today, what are the key dates? What's the first draw PPP, second draw PPP, forgiveness updates, and what to do, additional resources. We're going to go through all those things very, very quickly, but we're going to go through it succinctly, too, so everybody gets an idea. Next page. Now, eligible applicants for the PPP prior to August 9th. As you know, the PPP was a great success to a point until we got to August 9th and realized that there was still $135 million sitting out there. Oops. They told us that there's some folks that either got disenchanted with the PPP or we were processing them fast enough. Something happened. We're not sure exactly what happened, but whatever the case may be, we did make some new provisions there. As you know, the original CARES Act came out in March of 27th, 2020. Then we had the Ppp Flexibility Act on June 5th, 2020, where we expanded the cover period for the PPP from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. Now we've got this tranche now that is going into effect, and I believe that was as of January 13th, and we started just launching it out. The one key date that everybody has to remember is that if you're going to get in on all the fun with this PPP, you got to get your applications into your bankers, your lenders, those facilitators that are working with the SBA by March 31st, 2021. Next slide, please. Now, who's eligible? Now, last time around, we got into this whole thing about who's eligible and which one of you bankers are remiss or do not remember the 52 IFRs we had out there, right? I call those the amendments when we didn't quite get it right the first time. So we kind of make it up as we go along. Again, we tried to do this one without flying the airplane and building it at the same time. So newly eligible entities are now 501c6 organizations. For all you COCs or Chamber of Commerce directors who beat me relentlessly last year, here you go. You guys get to get in on this now. Isn't that great? You got housing cooperatives, destination marketing organizations, and you also have some eligible news organizations. The folks that are still eligible are your regular business entities, your sole props, tribal businesses, veteran organizations, your traditional 501c3s, including the faith-based folks. Can we get to the next page, please? I'm sorry, I was looking at the notes. What is the second draw PPP? Well, you got a first draw, which was under the CARES Act, and that's the one where we ran out appropriations with on August 9th. Now we're coming up with the second draw. So the second draw means simply this. It is your second sip at the well of the PPP. So if you had a draw one, now you're going to have draw two, but it's a little bit different. As you remember before, we had the PPP went up to, what was that? I believe it was $10 million, 500 employees or less. This time you're looking at $2 million, 300 employees or less, plus we have a little added feature in there. You must have suffered at least a 25% reduction in your gross receipts or your revenues. That's 25%. Now, many of you may not have done that. I've got a question right now. Well, Mark, if I play with my books a little bit, no, don't play with your books, please. Don't do that. But if you honestly can say that you had a 25% reduction in your gross receipts, come on back and let's drink again. Let us help you one more time. Now, let me tell you the advantages this time. If you remember the first time around with the PPP, you either had the PPP or you had the employee retention tax credit. It was one or the other. Now you can take the PPP and do the employee retention tax credit. And prior to, under the old CARES Act, it went up to $6,000. Now it goes to $14,000, which I thought was that's pretty good, you know, when you really think about it. But when you really combine it with the monies that the government gives you for your PPP and expenses, once upon a time, we were all up in arms last year about, oh my, what are we going to do? You're going to 1099 me for the monies that you're giving me? Yeah, we are. And everybody had a fit. And on top of that, you know, and on the 40% of expenses, because remember now, we still have that 60-40 split, 60 for PPP, 40% for eligible expenses, okay? With that being said, now you can take under the eligible expenses, you can actually deduct that from your revenues now. So think about it. You're no longer going to get 1099 and looked at as this PPP loan as income. You are now going to be able to take expenses and the reductions. If you get real jiggy with it and real, I guess, I don't know how you're going to use it, but I know it's there. Take advantage of the ERTC tax credit. If you don't come and use the PPP program, I wouldn't know what kind of other motivation to give you. And to make it even better is that if you have one of the 72 NAICS codes, restaurants, remember before we looked at calculating the average payroll, breaking it down into a monthly deal and multiplying it by 2.5. If you're in the restaurant business or the hospitality, you know, that catering type business that's covered under the NAICS 72 family, you can go 3.5 times the average for the maximum loan amount. So this seems to be like PPP on steroids a little bit, if you ask me. Next slide, please. Additional eligible criteria we kind of talked about. Again, no more than 300 employees. You got to show that you had at least that 25% reduction comparable with quarters, meaning this. You got to be apples to apples, oranges to oranges, meaning that if you're going to use quarter one as a barometer for a calendar year for 2019, you got to use quarter one for 2020. You're going to use quarter three for 2019, you know, you got to use quarter three for 2020. So you can't mix them up to make sure that you can get that 25% reduction. So we're asking you to be honest and, you know, hang with us and let's go ahead and do this thing right. And you have to have used your first draw loan amount for eligible expenses and the PP draw. Okay, you got to have satisfied all that criteria. Shouldn't have had any reduction in employees or wages, that sort of thing. Things that would have been things that normally help you when you look at the full-blown PPP that's above $50,000 to $150,000, where we'd be looking for safe harbors. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now here we go, PP loan. Now here's something that was really, really kind of tough. Last year, borrowers must apply for forgiveness through the lender. Lenders must submit borrower forgiveness decisions to the SBA. Updates per the Economic Aid Act. If you remember correctly, you know, we came out with the EIDL loan and we had that EIDL advance. And under the EIDL advance, that was the grant feature. You know, you take this money, you don't have to pay us back. Don't even worry about it. That was like, it was on the same application. If you check the box, you got the grant and you'd be considered for the loan. Well, I guess we did okay with that until a couple of people got kind of smart and did a couple of things that are kind of unscrupulous that made our monies go very fast. So what happened was that we turned around and we said, okay, we're only going to give the advance out to those based on employees. So if you had one employee, you got $1,000. If you had 5 employees, you got $5,000. 7 employees, $7,000, so forth and so on. Well, this time around, what we're going to do is that, number one, we're going to forgive all the PP loans. They're not going to be taxable anymore. Well, we talked about that. But with the EILD advance, it's no longer going to be deducted from your forgiveness payment. That's the major point I want to make on this slide. If you remember correctly, if you got an EIDL advance and then you applied to the bank and got a PPP, and let's just say, for instance, it was $10,000, okay? Well, that $10,000 would have been taken from your forgiveness amount on your PPP loan, leaving you with a $10,000 deficit in forgiveness that you would have been subjected to 1% over 2 years or 1% over 5 years, whether or not you got your PP loan prior to June 5th or after June 5th. Let's see here. We're going to have, we have to simplify forgiveness is going up from the $50,000 to $150,000. So for all of you folks out there, you bankers that were hedging your bets that would happen, congratulations, you won. You bet the right way. So if you're all in, you did pretty good for yourselves. I think that's it for this slide. Next slide, please. So what do we do now on these stimulus packages? The Ppp Paycheck Program loan, third round. Well, we'll see. We'll see. As you know, we do have the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. Many of you have heard about that. It's like the slang term, the unprofessional, I guess, the term that SBA shouldn't use, saver stages, but I'll use it anyway. That program is geared for folks who are in the arts business, like stage performers, people who promote plays, jazz musicians, folks who are promoting those type of venues, folks that might be having museums. I'm trying to think of some other things. Let me see. Anybody that's live venue, performing arts in general. So all those jazz clubs that were kind of like the Green Door, and not to say where I hang out or anything like that, but some of the jazz places that most people would go ahead and attend, they are now qualified under the Venue Operators Grant Act. However, there's a caveat to that, and I happen to think it'll probably get, well, I'm not going to interject my opinion, but it's said that if you have applied for PPP and received a PPP loan, that you can no longer be considered under the SVOG grant. You see, the SVOG grant is a pure grant program, whereas with the PPP, even though you had to satisfy certain conditions to be exonerated or forgiven for the entire amount. The Shuttered grant with the SVOG program, if you're an operator, you have to show that you had a decrease in revenues of at least 45% of your gross revenues, and I believe that is as of February 29th of 2020 from last year. I'd have to look that up, but again, if you go to our webpage, you'll see it there too. I'm not telling many of you anything that much new. I think that would be about it for right now with that SVOG, with the Sheltered Venue Operators Grant Program. Again, the EIDL Advanced Program, we kind of talked about that already. But you know what I didn't tell you? Yeah. Remember we talked about how folks got kind of locked out of the advance. You know, if you got $1,000 and you didn't get the $10,000, you definitely felt cheated, right? Come on. You know you felt cheated. Same way with if you applied and we said, oh, sorry, we don't have any more money. Well, if you applied and you were persistent with us and you stuck it out with us and you applied and you got your application in before December 27th, 2020, this is what's going to happen. Under the targeted EIDL program, if you were first tranche of monies, if you were one of those folks who only got a partial payment on the advance, okay, you have 300 employees or less, you showed a 30% reduction in your receipts, and you're in a low, moderate income area, which we do have a map that is on our website for, so you can see. You will be contacted by the SBA and invited to participate in getting the balance of that money. So if you only got $1,000 and you were entitled to get maybe $4,000, $5,000, but you definitely didn't get your $10,000, they're going to make you whole for the entire $10,000. So they will give you $9,000 extra dollars if you fit that targeted criteria as it is stated in the Economic Aids Act for hard-hit businesses. Now, if you're one of those people who just got shut out, you got nothing, zero, nada, don't worry about it. The SBA will contact you, and if you fulfill the criteria, what I just stated, on a targeted basis, they will make you whole and give you a full $10,000. Now, there are going to be some of you who are disgruntled and going to say, well, hey, how about those of us who didn't apply before December 27th, Mark? What am I going to do? Well, I would say pray, because you're probably going to be a little bit out of luck. From what I understand, once we get through those two segments, one with the partial EIDL advance and then with a whole EIDL advance, we're not sure if we're going to have that much money left, and you still have a waiting line of like 16 million people there. I'm not here to dampen anybody's spirits, but that's what's going to probably happen. The other thing that's going to happen too is that we have very, very good businesses out here that took advantage of the advance program. But what happens if they're not in the low, moderate income area? Can they qualify? What if they didn't have a 30% reduction? Can they still get their monies? No. The reason being, you're not eligible. And this is the way this program was legislated to us. And we, as the SBA personnel, have to go ahead and implement the program as it is legislated to us. So that's just one of the, I guess, the costs of doing business. You know, we still have the economic injury disaster loan. It's still intact. Nothing's really changed with that. The debt relief program that was pertaining primarily to SBA loans, the 504, 7A microloan program, where we would go ahead and we pay the principal and interest on your loans. That too will be taken care of. If you already have that in process, you don't have to do anything. So you don't have to really apply for that if you're already in place. We know, because we saw it become a guarantee loan during the appropriate time frame. And the other thing is that with the EIDL advance, don't call us, we'll call you. All right? With the 8A Business Development Program extension, many of you know that the 8A program is a great program for those businesses that have been traditionally left out of the process, that want to go ahead and do business with the United States government and capitalize on that $550 billion, of which 23% has been set aside for small businesses, and of that, at least half has been set aside for those who have been traditionally left out in different percentages. That program is a business development program. And for those businesses that are in that program, it's 9 years. Normally, we're throwing on an extra year because COVID has wreaked havoc among our economic structure. Next slide, please. So what do I do now? Well, I'm going to tell you what you can do. The best, to me, the very, very best website here is the www.sba.gov PPP. That'll take you where you really, really need to go. The Updates is an excellent website. Now, you can have your folks, or people in general, go ahead and submit questions in the illinois.do.sba.gov. That is our office box. I have people, I have a lot of team members there that look at that box and they'll answer those questions. All right. In addition, if you have a question now, if you have a really desperate question that you need to have answered, then you can go ahead and hit me at mark.ferguson@sba.gov. You can look me up. I'm all over the place. Or give me a call at 312-353-5430. Look, I've been sitting here for the last, like you guys, last 11, 12 months from the home working, and, you know, I can use another voice other than just my team saying, hey, how we doing, and this and that. I'd like to talk with you guys if you have anything that you want to talk to us about. But it's mark.ferguson@sba.gov. And like I said, if you got constituents or customers, you know, it might be one of those questions that, well, you know how your customers can be. Send them to the Illinois District Office box, and we will give them the same service. But only you should try to contact me, you know, so I can give you that little personal advice. So with that being said, I believe that I'm done with this slideshow. And I'm not sure what Lisa wants to do, if you want me to ask questions, but by all, hey, please do this for me. How are we doing? I mean, we're doing the best that we can, I know, but I need your opinion too as to how we are doing. So if you can always give us some feedback or some other ideas, that constructive ideas, constructive, please. Constructive ideas, that would be much appreciated. And if you could do that for me, that would be great. So with that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. It's always a pleasure hearing from the SBA side. So thank you so much. We are now going to move on to the Illinois Bankers Association. Ben and Randy, if you want to give a quick introduction before we proceed over to our actual bank conference.
I will do that. Thanks, Elisa. Thank you. Just a big shout out and thanks to the Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection and also the U.S. Small Business Administration for putting this on. And really, thank you, all of you, for joining with us today. This is so important. And like Mark said, it really is up to you to reach out and get your questions answered. It's my privilege to lead the Illinois Bankers Association. We represent banks all across the state of Illinois, from the biggest to the very smallest banks in Illinois. And I'm so proud of our banks who have stepped up day after day after day, through weekends, late at night, dealing with challenging computer systems to help you all, help people, their customers, with getting access to PPP loans, and they still are there for you. So just want to encourage you to listen up, take notes, and then, like Mark said, to follow up and reach out to a lender to ask some questions and see if they can provide some help. This is here for you, and we just encourage you to reach out and see if it's going to fit. And with that, it is my privilege to hand it over to our Executive Vice President, Head of Government Relations, Ben Jackson, who's going to lead and moderate the discussion with 4 great bankers that we have with us today. So Ben, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Randy. And again, kudos to the city for partnering with us and to the SBA for providing a great presentation. Mark, mentioned something that kind of struck me in his presentation, which is that, there was the second draw, and there seems to be a drop-off there. And we've found that there is some public sentiment towards, all right, maybe I'm not eligible now, maybe I'm going to have issues applying, or it's just not worth it. It's too complicated. And I think you're going to hear today from our members who are on this call that you should reach out, and they're willing to work with you. And banks all across the state, both the folks on this call as well as our other members throughout Illinois, stand ready to work with you. They want to get this money out the door. The SBA has put incredible work into refining and perfecting this process and making it easier for the lender and the borrower. So we encourage you to reach out after this, as Randy said. And with that, we'll start with our banking panelists. Jump right in here. We're starting with Eric Anderson. He's the Director of Risk Management and Business Banking with BMO Harris Bank. So Eric, take it away, and thanks so much for participating.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. So as Ben mentioned, I'm Eric Anderson. I'm the Director of Risk Management for Business Banking. I office here in Chicago, and I'm very proud to be here today and to talk about the PPP program that we have. If you go to the next slide, I'd appreciate it. You know, if you were to look at my screensaver every single day, that in every one of the nearly 7,000 employees in and around the Chicagoland area, you'd see our slogan, boldly grow the good in business and life. Out of all of the various projects I've worked on in 25 years of banking, some of the ones that I'm going to talk about today, especially PPP, mean the most to me. The reason why is because whether it be lending money to buy a car, buy a house, start a business, nothing's been as more meaningful to me as it is to help businesses stay afloat and keep the American dream, and even more importantly, to be able to keep putting food on the tables of the families that are the backbone of our economy and a lot of the employment that we rely on as an institution and as well as communities. So we're going to talk real quickly today about how to apply for a PPP loan and things that you need to think about as you encounter one of our branches. One of the great things is we have a tremendous footprint in the Chicagoland area. We've been here since 1882. We have almost 200 branches only in Chicago. If you get outside, there's obviously quite a few more in the collar counties, and about 7,000 employees between our corporate areas as well as those various branches. Next slide, please. We've had a pretty busy last year too, and when you think about how you want to run your operations and your business, it's critically important that you not only focus on certain customers, that you try to build an inclusive society for everyone to be able to offer those products in. We've had some great highs over the last year, over $10 million in donations to Chicago Economic Development Plan through Mayor Lightfoot, as well as nearly $20 million in donations through the United Way between Chicago and Toronto, and recognized for some of the greatest places to work. I'm very proud to work at BMO, but especially including diversity, inclusion, and female-owned businesses. Next slide, please. So let's talk about the PPP program. One of the really important things to realize about the way that BMO is launching the program is the fact that we're not just launching a portal where you have to go on and try to figure out, like using TurboTax or Quicken to do your books. We've actually educated our army of bankers that are in every one of those 195 branches on PPP loan applications. So all you need to do is stop by a branch and they'll be more than happy to help you with that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, reflecting on last year, as Mark had mentioned, we had $5.2 billion in loans with just over 22,000 borrowers. And when you think about the types of businesses that broke into, almost 80% of those were small businesses under $150,000. They're your restaurants, retail businesses, construction businesses. Those are who we specialized in helping, and hence the reason why we're so proud to talk about this year. So the way the process actually works, and we can go on to the next slide, please. Actually, if you go, is really what you need to bring into the office is pretty basic information. Information about yourselves, who you are, your name, address, obviously you know that, as well as Social Security numbers for yourself, the business, or an employer identification number. As Mark mentioned, there's some sales figures you need to bring, either your 2019 or 2020, and then the quarter-over-quarter financials that he spoke about, so Q1 2019 versus Q1 of 2020, so that you can illustrate your 20% drop. Again, you just need to know them, just have them available when you walk into the branch. And then lastly, payroll information, and for most of our customers, it can be pretty much anything you're able to bring into the office. A lot of us haven't done our 2020 taxes. I haven't. So it's really kind of important if you have your QuickBooks. I've seen things such as notebook paper with payments written on it, anything really basic, just so that you can illustrate your payroll. And one other little tidbit is that if you can, just jot a quick note down as to how to come up with your average monthly payroll, which we use to come up with your loan. It makes it a lot smoother when an analyst has a minute or two just to look at a file. If they can see your math, it goes much easier. So once you have that information, how does the process actually work? First thing, stop by one of our branches, talk to any one of the bankers in that branch. They're going to ask you to open up a checking account. Now, why do we do that? The reason we require a checking account is really for fraud, to make sure that when you're applying, it's you and you're getting your funds, and not some fraudster down the street who's impersonating you. We're also doing it to cover off on a variety of government regulations, as the government requires to know our customers and be very familiar with them. Once you submit the loan application, honestly, right now, it's almost real-time underwriting. Same day, BMO will look at that application and send it off to the SBA. The SBA generally is taking about 1 to 2 days to look at that file, make sure everything is okay, that there's no issues with it. Then they'll grant their approval. And then usually in less than 10 days, those funds are put into your account. The reason we give you 10 days is just to make sure that the data is okay, that you didn't accidentally put in the wrong checking account number, that it's actually yours. In reality, if you're very careful filling out the application, it's much quicker than that. And I also need to say, too, that it's really important to realize that we've really focused very heavily, and one of the reasons why you have a risk manager rather than a salesperson in front of you is making sure that the program is done properly by the bylaws of the SBA, as well as based on all the governments or regulators. So we're making sure we process every single application in a first-come, first-served order and not prioritizing certain customers over others in order to be able to apply. And again, first step, just go to the branch, talk to your banker, have a conversation with them. They'll give you all the information you need, give you any advice that you might need as well, and some clarification on any questions that you might have. Next slide, please. Now, while you're there, some other things that I'm very proud of this past year, we've really gone to extreme strides to educate those same bankers in every one of our Chicago offices to be able to specially tailor products and needs to Black and Latinx businesses, as well as women-owned businesses. Whether it be having conversations about the needs and the challenges of those groups, or alternatively, support mechanisms such as group meetings and opportunities to share and network and build. Those bankers can also help you with that so that you can not only focus on your business, learn more about it, but also get experience from other creative business owners, as well as a partnership with the bank to continue to grow. Last slide. So the last two things I want to leave you with on the next slide is number one, step one, collect your information, sales, identification, payroll data, and stop by one of our branches and talk to one of our bankers who will assist you in the account. They will help you fill out the application right there on their computer and send it right over to our underwriters. Other information, including a recent webinar, is also located at a very easy to remember address, bmoharris.com/COVID-19. Thank you all for the opportunity, and I look forward to answering any questions. Ben, back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Eric. Great presentation. We're going to turn now to JPMorgan Chase. Sandra Mcgowan is Vice President and Senior Business Consultant with Chase for Business, focused on minority entrepreneurs. So Sandra, thanks for being here as well. Take it away.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Eric, for such a great detailed step-by-step. I think the process you're going to see is going to be the same in the banks. I think that what I'll highlight is what we're doing for businesses that may not have the ability to go to a branch. And so it augments some of the requirements of having to go to a bank. We just rolled out a digital platform where small businesses can go ahead and get information, real-time information on what's going on with the program as far as PPP is concerned. There's also a webinar there. And we're also allowing and giving the opportunity to small businesses to go online and open their account, and it gives them a step-by-step process. What we learned from the first tranche and the second tranche of applications is that we approved over 256,000 applications, and that certainly proved to be a very Herculean effort, because we definitely had to work with a number of our different underwriters around the country, and even I would say around the world, because it was all hands on deck. And so this time around, we wanted to make sure that we would give a digital platform where we would streamline it. And the process is much more streamlined, so that if there is any issues going on with the loan, they actually get to work with our business direct client service team. We do have bankers that have also been very well prepared, just given all of the moving pieces that occur and how it can sometimes be complicated. What I did want to focus on is that as a senior business consultant, I am focused on working with minority entrepreneurs, and this is something that we launched with the Path Forward commitment of $30 billion to help just bring a change as far as social equity to some of the underserved communities. And what that means is that there's a colleague of mine, Pam Randall, and myself that will work directly with small businesses. I concentrate on the Latinx communities to ensure that I'm working with a number of the Chamber of Commerce to provide guidance. If you can imagine, the application process is a little bit difficult for English speakers. And so for Spanish speakers, it just becomes a little bit more difficult. And so what I've done is that I've partnered up with a number of organizations that we work really closely with in the community to also provide some guidance around how do you go about getting a loan? What is the documentation that they need? How do you prepare for it so that you don't have to feel like you don't qualify for it? And so working closely with a number of other partners around the city of Chicago to ensure that we're also doing webinars. So next week on Monday, we're conducting a webinar with two of our nonprofits that we actually work really closely with through our Entrepreneur Cholera Fund. So there's a number of different other things that we're working on right now to ensure that any of the technical assistance that they need, that they're getting it from either Chase or a different organization, to ensure that they don't feel like they're being left behind. So I'm really glad that you gave me an opportunity just to provide that information. I would say that to the attendees, if you want to get some more information, you can go to the link in the site that's cited in the bottom of this presentation. But every small business is different. Every small business has different challenges. So through our minority entrepreneur program, we're doing one-on-one, and we're coaching small businesses and ensuring that they have the level of knowledge that they need in order to apply. So augmenting to what we're already doing with what we're calling the more core businesses that we're helping, we're also going ahead and just providing additional support to the small businesses in the Latin and the African American communities. Other than that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Ben. If anyone has any questions, I'll go ahead and provide my contact information in the chat box. If you are interested in participating in the upcoming webinar that we're having with some of our partners, I'm happy to share that information also. Ben, back to you.
All right, there is a question here, but we'll save it until the presentations are done. And I think it's directed at you, Sandra, but I think we can make that more general, and we'll revisit with that in a minute. And with that, we'll turn over to Tony Smith.
Right.
Tony,
thank you, Ben. And
go right ahead.
And I think you can hear me now. Again, thank you, and I'm delighted to say that PNC is again participating in the Paycheck Protection Program. If you go to the next slide, just some quick highlights in the first round. Like Chase, we committed a substantial number of individuals to make this program work. We laugh and say it was 14 years worth of work in 14 days. We certainly overwhelmed in the initial round. The SBA systems and even some of our own systems were not yet equipped to handle the kind of volume that came through. This time around, I am so delighted that our partners at the SBA and we and our fellow banks have finally gotten this process down. We're able to process the kind of volume. For us, that meant $13 billion in loans, averaging $179,000 per loan in the first round, with $1.5 billion of that in Illinois. And we additionally provided $50 million in below market rate loans to CDFIs. Those are organizations like Community Reinvestment Fund, IFF, and others that are right here in the Chicagoland region in particular that are getting into the trenches and making very small PPP loans for organizations that aren't going directly to banks. Here in round two, we have already processed over 25,000 applications. That number keeps growing, totaling over $2.8 billion. I believe we're close to $3 billion as of this morning. 23% of these are first-time applicants, implying that roughly 77% were second draw. We have roughly 370 employees dedicated to this, working 24-hour shifts so that we don't overload our own system, and we're able to get everything processed in near real time. That reads $1.5 billion. That should be $0.15 billion. That was $150 million in Chicagoland a few days ago. That number is now up to 177, almost 180 million. So really delighted with the throughput we're getting right here in Chicago. And again, we're continuing to support our CDFIs so that they can also make these loans. If you go to the next slide. Everything at PNC is online. You are able to go from soup to nuts. I will simply tell you that there are two principal classes. You're either already enrolled in a PNC online banking product or you're not. And so you'll pick one of these two pathways. Both will get you to a PPP application. Obviously, as was shared earlier, if you're already a client of the bank, we've already cleared you through the traditional know your client type processes, and we try to make it very easy. But there are a couple of things that we have found that make the application process even easier. If you go to the next slide. Again, you already heard this. Have all your documentation ready. I'm going to go one step further and say if you can get it into a PDF form versus a Word or Excel or other form, it generally goes through and transmits easier. And our guys have the technology to convert those documents into working or manipulative files. Our online documents are fillable type PDF type documents. So it's really easy for you to put your information in. The real key is having it all there and handy. If you use ADP or another payroll provider, absolutely take advantage of that because that's going to help you get to your processor and an end solution faster. But there are a couple of things you'll want to note that were different from the first round. When you submit your financial information, you have to sign it. If it's not an audit, you have to sign for the document and you have to initial each page. And Mark, I can refer back to Mr. Ferguson there. That was obviously a change that the SBA made midstream. We had already processed 18,000 applications when that change came. We had to go back and collect signatures. But just be aware, do look at the SBA's website with regards to the financial information. You got to sign and initial all the financial documents. I would also say after you complete your application on our site, you will be given an access code. You will be able to check on its progress. You'll know that it's been through the PNC underwriting process. It's been submitted to the SBA, that we're waiting for approval, that we got approval, that we're waiting for money, where we got your money and we have funded it into your account. So we really want to make it easy for you to not only complete the process, but to track it as you go so that you'll know where you are and you're not living with the day-to-day worry. And if you go to the next slide. Oh, sorry about that. I think I cut that down to 4, so sorry for going on too soon. I would just share with you just a couple of things, and that is, one of the big questions is how equitable is participation in the program. We have put meters in place so that we can track what kind of volume is occurring on what we call low to moderate income census tracts, which tends to bear a very positive correlation to peoples of color. You can't obviously segregate your applications based on race for a variety of legal reasons. But we're delighted to say that certainly in the Chicagoland area, right now we're tracking about 23-24%, which is quite frankly better than the LMI business distribution in the city. So we're continuing to track that, but to make the program more robust and more inclusive, we're also funding a number of our what we call technical assistance partners. So if you're struggling with the application, even with the bank assist, you got organizations like Chatham Business Association run by Melinda Kelly. You got the Austin African American Business Association. You've got similar organizations in Pilsen. You have the Chambers and the likes. You have Women's Business Development, who all are offering technical assistance, most of which has already been pre-funded by private organizations or banks or the like. So if you need help, get the help. Lastly, just a reminder to applicants, I have found in looking at a sampling of applications that came in this round, and companies are still submitting general payroll, but they're forgetting that payroll can include benefits and insurance. So if you are the company and you're paying for those benefits, include those in your payroll bucket, not your other expense bucket, because you're multiple, whether it's 2.5 or 3.5 times, depending on the industry group that you're in. That's relevant. Know your NAICS code, your NAICS or your industry standard industry code. Very important because that's going to establish a number of things for you. Mark mentioned, for example, does it make more sense for you to apply for a grant? If you're a museum or other entertainment venue, we're going to look for what we call any of those in, NAICS code group 72. If you're in that group, you are eligible for a grant, or you're eligible for 3.5 times if you're in the restaurant and other bar and other groups. So we have our folks looking at this to make sure that you're optimizing it. We will very quickly tell you if we think you missed something for which you may qualify for more funds. So I will pause there. I do hope that you will apply what the SBA has done here in terms of making the revenue non-taxable while you get to the expenses on your tax return. It's a huge benefit and much needed, and hopefully, knock on wood, there'll be around 3 another stimulus for our businesses. I'll pause there. Ben?
Great. Thanks, Tony. Our last speaker on the banking panel, and then I believe we'll turn to questions, is Lizette Luna Guzman. Thank you so much for joining us. She is from U.S. Bank. She's the BBS Sales Manager. So take it away. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ben. So I get the pleasure of being last, so I'm going to keep mine short and simple and sweet. However, I'm the Business Banking Specialist Sales Manager in the Chicago metro area. I mean, similar to my fellow panelists, what they're saying, U.S. Bank has made it really streamlined for every single business customer to really get online and apply. So what we're doing right now is, we're accepting applications from our existing customers. We're also accepting applications from non-customers. You can apply online at usbank.com, /PPP. It's very simple. We are offering you the capability to pretty much do everything digitally yourself. And the great advantage that we're offering there too is we do have something called Co-Browse, which is a digital tool that we're offering where we are providing you banker assistance from any of your local bankers at any local branch, or myself, or any business banking specialist can assist you with this as well, or business banker, where they can kind of walk you as well through the online application. Similar to what I think Tony shared, I believe Sandra from Chase shared, our application is very streamlined. It walks you through every single guideline that the SBA is asking you for. It also allows you to, at the minute that you put your NAICS code in there, or you put in what type of, entity you are, it allows you to see what type of paperwork you would need to provide as a small business owner to continue with the process. It also communicates with you. So if you're talking, if you're submitting documents, it's communicating to you what the next steps are. So where you're at in the process. It's very simple. And again, it allows you also to incorporate your local banker. So if you're looking for assistance in different languages, we offer that for you. We have a lot of Spanish, Polish, Mandarin, anything you can think of, we can assist you there as well. The other thing about our digital application is it allows you to execute your documents and everything from home. So similar to every single panelist, I think they've kind of shared, we're trying to make it easier for our customers to have a much easier experience. And then the last thing is, we offer a lot of different solutions as well at US Bank to help you as a small business owner. So if you're looking for more information regarding that, feel free to contact me. I am the sales manager in the Chicago metro area. Currently, my team is actually processing these loans. So we're kind of all hands in right now. We're really wanting to make a difference in your lives and make sure that we're taking care of every need that we can possibly do for you as a small business owner. We get it. We understand there's a struggle out there. We understand that you're needing, different things for your employees. We've got you here at US Bank. So my contact information is there. And then obviously, again, just applying at usbank.com/PPP, very simple, easy process. You don't have to be an existing customer, and we can provide you the capability of being at home and processing everything there. So that is it. But I will turn it back to Ben for, I believe, Q&A. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. And thanks all the panelists. I hope folks listening to the call are recognizing here sometimes it seems that there's a bit of a, misunderstanding that banks are not operating in the communities that all of you are serving. And I hope you're recognizing here that all of the organizations, along with others who aren't on this call, they work within the local communities here in Chicago, neighborhoods throughout the city, partner with Axion, partner with other nonprofit lenders, community groups, chambers of commerce, and there are a lot of resources and a lot of backing for those types of programs. And everyone here on the call is prepared to help. I thought I'd start with one question that has come up a lot for us and seems to be reflected in some of the comments. A couple of the panelists mentioned non-customers. And during the first round, and we're still hearing this a little bit from the second round, non-customers seem to have a little higher bar to cross. I think Eric kind of addressed this a little bit, but what can non-customers expect if they're kind of doing a cold application in with a bank? And is being a non-customer a barrier at all to getting a PPP loan?
Hey, Ben, this is Tony. I'll jump in on that. We certainly know that there are a number of banks across the country when the first round was announced, made a decision, and one that I think many learned to regret, to go with customers only. And the SBA and litigators made it very clear this was meant for everyone. So figure out how to do it. And I think most banks figured out how to offer it to everyone. So qualifying non-customers essentially is almost the same process as bringing in a new customer to the bank and opening up a checking account. You have to comply with the Patriot Act and know your client rules. So it means you're, for the most part, giving information off your driver's license, your social security number, generally photo ID, all the same things you would use to open up a credit card or a checking account online. So it really isn't that much harder. As a new client, we don't have the benefit of having, for example, your financial statements already in our inventory, because when we have those, we have clients that say, hey, you know me, you've been collecting quarterly financials for the last, 10 years. Obviously, it means we're collecting that information fresh. But guess what? Most of the existing clients still have to provide information in the form as required by the SBA. So there's not a big gap, at least not at a PNC. And so our aim is to make this as painless for you as possible, but you still have information you have to collect, and you got to comply with rules, which include you got to prove that there was the required drop in revenue 2 comparative quarters for the application period. So I would say, at least from our perspective, not a big issue, and it's generally a matter of several minutes to get you set up for a checking account.
I just want to add to that, for U.S. Bank, similar to, what Tony's sharing, it's the same process for us. So if you're a non-customer, we just want to go through the compliance stuff of, making sure that you're putting your ID, that information, and verifying your financial documents. You can also use the portal. It walks you through, it gives you a code. We create your whole online experience there as well. And you're also giving the capability that every customer is given, where we can co-browse with you and walk you through the application. So it's not anything more difficult. It's just more just entering a couple of extra steps in there to get you through the process.
I think that covers it very well, unless any of the other panelists want to jump in there. And I think we have just a few more minutes before general Q&A. So I did want to ask too, so when we're talking about the online portals and such, I did see some comments here in the Q&A and in the general comments about, perhaps the online matrix being a little daunting or lacking that, personal connection. So was that you mentioned, hey, we can walk you through this. How does, in each of your institutions, how does that work? What is the, what's the human connection that you can provide for that online framework that may be very helpful for the small business, but a little daunting for some?
No, that's a great question, Ben. I'm really proud that U.S. Bank right now, we have something called co-browse, and you heard me mention it. It's something new that we've come out digitally, but what happens is if you're a customer or non-customer, you're going to our application, you're applying, you can actually talk to a local banker, our 1-800 number, or myself, right, or any of our business bankers. There's a code when you go online that you would give to your banker. Your banker can actually see everything that you're seeing as you're doing it. And the reason we did this is just because, like you said, Ben, it's a little daunting for small business owners to go through some things, or maybe sometimes they're looking for, especially first-time appliers, they're looking for, where do I look for what the required documents are? We're walking you through it to make sure that you're entering your information, you're prepared for it, and that you feel comfortable walking through each piece of it. And actually, so the banker can actually see as you're going through things. I mean, obviously private information and so forth is masked, but however, we're walking you through and saying, okay, this is where you need to enter this. This is where you need to enter that. And it really makes the process kind of seamless because we walk you through the whole step until you submit. And then from there, then you're going to our processing team, which I think is pretty great, especially for, anyone that speaks a different language. Sometimes you just want to connect with somebody who speaks your own language, but actually can see what you're seeing. And I'm sure as small business owners, we've all had that frustrating moment where you're on the phone with somebody and you're like, wait, you can't see what I see. So this allows us to see what you see and walk you through it. And we have this as well for our online banking, by the way. So anything that you're trying to accomplish for online banking for our existing customers out there, or our new potential customers, this is the same feature that we offer you in the same capability. We're customer obsessed.
Hey, Ben, I would add to that you have two real groups of customers. Those that have CPA or audited financial statements tend not to have the same level of challenges when entering data. But companies that are, for the most part, less formal and, for example, document sales by showing bank statements that they have to collect over a long period of time to show how much money has flowed in and how much money has flowed out. It tends to get a little bit muddier there because they're trying to add up all the numbers. What we've done in those cases is we give you two options. Do it yourself, try to add up all the numbers and submit the statements, or just submit them to us. And in our case, we have folks who are trained to do this and will quickly help you gauge what your receipts are using SBA vernacular and help you get there. So it really depends. It really comes back to this. Application complexity tends to mirror how well organized your financial information is. And if you need a technical assist, let us know, and we can also help set you up with a partner or very much like Lizette, we can have someone call and work with you, and we're happy to do that.
Right, and I would add to Tony and Lisette, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to provide individuals that do need the technical assistance to partnering up with other CDFIs that we work really closely with. When you're dealing, I believe last week we had 100,000 applications that came in, and we're trying to go through those applications to really ensure that all the documentation is there properly so that the customer experience is seamless. So if there is any issues, any questions that you may have regarding any of the Chase experiences you've had, I gone ahead and provided my contact information. Please reach out to me, and I'll definitely make sure that I help you through the process.
And Ben, I'd add one thing too from BMO's perspective, and I think for all of us too. We're talking a lot about complexity and possibly needing help in order to complete this. You're talking about small businesses where it is much of a decision between the business and the person as to which pocket you're going to put your debit card or your cash in. And for those small businesses, this can be a really daunting process as to what financials do I need to bring to the bank or through an online channel to try to have a discussion about it. The foremost recommendation I would suggest is don't be discouraged by it. Take what you have, gather what you do have, talk to whoever it is that might be taking that application for you, because I think you'd be very, very surprised at how simplistic the financial information can be for some borrowers. And obviously, if you have very complex organizations and you want to get that pencil super sharp with the loan amount, you can bring in lots of information and make sure that we digest all of it. So don't be discouraged with a conversation about complexity. Your banks, the SBA, will make sure it's simple for you.
And I think we're just a minute over our allotted time, so we'll turn it back. And thanks again to the panelists. Thanks to the city for this great partnership, and we hope it'll continue.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you to all of our panelists. We do have some time for general questions, so I'm going to run through them. First question is, on the second draw, you have to show 25% loss in revenue. Do loans and grants count towards income?
That's generally a very popular question for not-for-profits, and the answer is yes, loans, grants, contributions, investment income are all included in the equation.
Mm-hmm. Go. Next question is, I filed my EIN in 2018. However, I did not become an LLC and open a bank account until July 2020. Is this a reason to run into problems? There are no taxes for those years, so does that disqualify me?
Were they in business on February 15th, 2019? Or for the second tranche, February 15th, 2020?
So that would be for something for them to look into, yeah.
Yeah, they need to look into that, because you got to remember the PPP loan is not a credit loan. It's based on your payroll. Okay, we're not looking for collateral. We're not looking for this or that. All we're looking for is to go ahead and help you with your payroll and all eligible expenses like supplier costs, mortgage interest, those things. That'll be put in the 40%. You have your PPP on the 60% on the forgiveness side. If you forgive the 60 and all the expenses that you used on the 40% side are eligible, 100% of the proceeds will be forgiven for you. So, I mean, it's a great loan. It's a great opportunity. But you do, like Tony said, and like some of the bankers here said, you have to put in a little sweat equity and get it right, number one. That means cross your dot your I's and cross your T's, because after all, it is your business, and if it's your business, you're the leader of the pack, so you need to act like you know, number one. Number two, what you need to do as a small business person, though, is make yourself aware and work with your individual bankers, because they will help you the rest of the way. You have to understand, from an SBA point of view, all these folks here, my bankers were my customer, but you folks, the small business folks, are their customer. There's one other thing I wanted to say too. You know, there was something, a little banner going back and forth about, you know, what if this bank doesn't this bank doesn't that? You know, if you already have an existing or have already satisfied the first PPP under the CARES Act, and you want to go ahead for the second tranche of funding under the Economic Aid Act, we're going to use your same loan number. Okay, it's going to look awfully weird if PNC got to go ask BMO or vice versa. Hey, what was your loan number? Because I got one of your disgruntled people over here and we're going to take them. You know, don't do that. You know, because now you're starting all over again. Folks, small business people, use your head. 2% of us think, 3% of us think, we think 95% of us rather be dead than think. I didn't say that. George Bernard Shaw said that. So, but just think about it. Use your head and take the path of, you know, least resistance. If you went to the ball with BMO or PNC or Chase or US Bank, then come home with them too. But get your money, because you only got to the 31st of September. 31st of March. So go get your money now. This is easy lending. Do the things.
I think all of that, and the question though was, if you weren't in business at February, you missed a qualification date. So hopefully the next round, and I've got my fingers crossed, knocking on wood, that there will be more. Hopefully that's one of the things we'll think of in advance to push that date out for what we call our new businesses that have formulated, you know, during this COVID economy. With regards to Mark's comment, yeah, you know, we love you when you come back to us, but we know that what the SBA did this time around is it allowed smaller community banks to get a head start. They were able to begin submitting applications sooner. So we actually had some of our applicants from round one apply with the community bank, and absolutely we were delighted to share the required information, application numbers, and other data regarding the prior application, which was a required element for the second application. So, you know, do what you have to do for your business. That's where I'm going to echo Mark. Do what's best for your business. And as banks, we're here to facilitate you getting to that finish line. And personally, and I'm pretty sure I speak for everyone on this panel, we don't care if it's us or someone else. What really matters is that you get the funds needed to stabilize your business, keep employees employed, keep our economy strong.
Great, thank you. And before I proceed to the next questions, can each panelist put in either their contact information or general contact information for applying for the loan with their bank, and just make sure to send it to everyone in the chat box, just select everyone to make sure all of our attendees get to view that information. And then also real quick, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. I'll post the link in the chat box as well. And moving on, next question is, how do sole proprietors or those with only a Schedule C no quarterly financials calculate their drop in gross receipts?
In that instance, you probably would have to do it annually, and it will be determined by your tax return on your Schedule C line 31 if you're a sole proprietor.
We'll go one step further. So what we generally do in that case is it's really a question. Are you keeping monthly or a minimum quarterly financial statements? Hopefully you are as a business. You know how much you know what your sales are, and you know what your expenses are. And certainly, you know, if you're a single employee, then what you paid yourself, or in the case of Schedule C, it's essentially how much money has fallen to the bottom line. And when we look at that bottom line, there are two elements. The wages that you pay to yourself, and if there are none and all you're doing is spending the profits, then we're looking at the profits. So we would go quarter by quarter by quarter for 2019 and do the same thing for 2020. and compare them. If you don't have that quarterly data, then you have to build it. And generally that means the easiest way for some is to go back and look at your checking account or your business account and see what kind of money came in and what went out. Now, we know a lot of folks aren't necessarily depositing the money in an account, and it gets really difficult to validate your sales when you're not depositing those, when you're not getting paid by credit card or checks, and therefore there's a gap. And so we're looking, again, period to period. What does your statement say for quarter 1, 2019 versus quarter 2? So the answer is yes. If we don't have, if all we have is your annual, that's generally not going to be enough to show the quarter by quarter drop. You will have to construct quarterly statements. So need to get running with that and get that piece done.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, are child care providers, both centers and family homes, do they qualify for the PPP? P3, we're just going to say it.
Yes, any business that's going to file any kind of business tax return, whether it be a Schedule C, sole proprietor, 1099, individual contractors, or any other kind of business would qualify, with some certain businesses that don't, that are identified through the SBA. But those are largely businesses that we would probably normally think might have a little trouble obtaining a loan, such as illegal activities or so forth.
Mm-hmm. Good. When will the new guidelines for P3 forgiveness be given?
New guidelines?
This person mentioned new guidelines. So maybe can you give a brief overview about the forgiveness process?
Well, the forgiveness process will be one where you have up to, once you get done with your covered period, whether it's 8 weeks or 24 weeks with this new tranche of money, it can be either 8 weeks, 24 weeks, or any other weeks you designate in between. But once you do satisfy everything and you put in your forgiveness paperwork with the banks will go ahead and dot their I's and cross their T's and make sure they're good with it. And they usually take maybe, 30 to 60 days, and then they'll submit it to SBA. SBA will do our due diligence and make sure everything is great. And I think our turnaround time is no less than, I want to say 60, but I think it's 90 days. Don't quote me on that just yet. Between 60 and 90 days, then what will happen is then we will remit the money back to the bank, who will then become whole, and everything is good again. So and if you're talking about forgiveness guidelines as, going from 50,000 up to 150,000, that's something that's a little different, but I don't think I'm not very positive about that question or the facts surrounding that question.
Next question is, if you have employees that were counted in the first P3 but are no longer with the company, but you have now replaced their positions, is this an issue with this round? Do you have to have the same number of employees as you did in round 1?
No, you do not. If you reduce the amount of employees that you have after taking a loan out, so you apply, that sets the bar as to how many employees you have. If you reduce it, your forgiveness is simply prorated by the amount of employees that have left in the meantime. But just because it's different from what you received in round 1 isn't going to have an impact on the round 2 loan.
There you go.
Just really quick, I see a couple questions about the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. And Mark from the SBA did mention that they're currently not accepting applications, but there is a FAQ up on the SBA website. So you can just head over there to at least get some general information prior to the application process.
And that 45% reduction in receipts that I was talking about would be actually also your loan amount, or your grant amount, I should say, pardon me. It is the sheltered venue operations grant amount. That, or I believe it's $10 million, or whatever the less is of the two. So if you have a 45% reduction in your gross receipts, it can't exceed then that $10 million.
Got it. For not-for-profit organizations, are there any other documents needed for submission in addition to documents mentioned by presenters? So is the application process any different for not-for-profits?
It's not. The only thing that you may need to do, depending on which bank or the due diligence standards, is, for example, with BMO, we just need to illustrate to open up a checking account that whoever's there is doing it has the ability to open it on behalf of the business. So I would suggest bringing your bylaws, which is what gives everyone various authorities, with you. It'll frankly be required anyways when you open up an account up, but really that's the only difference in the information that you need to supply.
I would add this. Remember, if you're not for profit, you want to think of gross revenues or receipts in terms of what you would see on your tax return, not what you would see using an accrual basis on your audits. And that's important because if you have a substantial investment fund, capital gains are not counted in gross receipts, but investment income, the interest and dividends, is. So make sure you're using tax return gross revenues and not accrual basis gross revenues. Really important for our not-for-profits. And it is a gross revenue equation just like it is for all other businesses. It's not a bottom line. And I think there is one, and Eric, you might know this rule better than me. There's grant income unconditional, and there's grant income that is conditional. Pass-through income, for example. And so you'll want to work with your accountant to make sure that on those pass-through grants that the way you recognize revenue generally is, and GAAP permits this, is you have the amount that is unconditional and recognizable in the period you recognize. The amount that is unearned revenue should be below the line. So work with your accountant and make sure you get that equation right, because we know a number of our not-for-profits tend to get these conditional grants or pass grants, and it's not real revenue for them. And so there's enough flexibility under GAAP and even in the tax return process to avoid that particular error. The other thing is to recognize it's a quarter-by-quarter comparison. So most of our not-for-profits have gotten smart enough to pick the quarter where they had the weakest year-over-year comparison. And that's not to say game the system. It's just to say there are some nuances in the not-for-profit space that really make it very different. Also, I don't believe, and Mark, you can correct me on this one, not all not-for-profits, many not-for-profits, 501c3s, 501c6s, there's certain others. Make sure you're a qualified not-for-profit.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I saw this question come up a few times. What expenses qualify for forgiveness on a self-contractor? Tony, I did see you respond with mortgage, interest, utilities, healthcare benefits. Anything else to add? Supplier
expenses, some of the new added stuff, any like PPP type expenses. I didn't say PPP, I said PPE expenses to protect the worker. Trying to think. They expanded them just slightly a little bit, but yeah.
I think the important thing is it does not include cost of goods sold. And for a lot of small contractors, that's their biggest expense. Unfortunately, remember, it's just a gauge. Did your top line revenue fall off? You know, that's test number one, regardless of expenses, regardless of what's going on in the cost of goods acquisition space. It's about top line revenues. Did your top line revenues fall off by greater than 20 or 25%, depending on the meter? And that's your first test for qualification.
A very common question here is, if you did not apply for P3 the first round, can you apply now?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, you can.
I feel like all panelists could have said that in unison, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Smiles all.
And we have time only for a couple more questions. And once again, for those looking for contact information, it is in the chat box. Each of our panelists did put their contact information in the chat box. Also, this webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to watch the presentation again on our YouTube channel, and the link is in the chat box right now. Our question is, as an unlicensed sole proprietor with only myself as an employee, am I eligible? I've been a dog walker for 5 years.
Does unlicensed mean that you don't file your tax return, or?
Well, you got right to it. Did you file your taxes? And you know, there are businesses that file taxes and pay taxes quarterly, and then there are some that just do it annually. But you had to provide tax returns, and then we have to verify the income. And generally, if you're getting 1099s because you're paid, but I don't know that all dog walkers are getting 1099s. So it may be that we have to check something, you know, what's going through your checking account. We have to prove the revenue flow.
And we'll end with this question: is a promotion and production company of an annual gardening show eligible for SVO grant? Mark, that question is for you.
I would say, is it a live performance? So let me put it this way. Wait, is it like All in the Family where they film the show in front of a live performance, or?
I'm wondering if this person has a company that assists with like event planning and management.
Well, if it's event planning and management, they're fine. They can apply for the SVLG grant. I was just wondering if I thought I heard video in there or something. Maybe I didn't hear you correctly.
It was a promotion and production company.
Promotion and production companies, that's fair game. They can qualify.
Okay, great.
You know, jazz restaurants, or, you know, supper clubs, movie theaters, all the artsy stuff that we miss that a lot of folks are complaining to us about. Well, everybody else is getting a paycheck. How come I'm not? Well, this is the way we got you in. So now you can try to get in and get paid too.
Hey, Mark, is that grant, is that the same bucket of money that you said was already exhausted, the one available for grants for museums and other venues?
No. That's not exhausted. No.
Oh, okay. I'm glad. I thought I misheard that.
No. If it was, Tony, somebody got the inside scoop on that. I didn't.
Yeah.
No, but no.
I'm still trying to encourage a couple of our museums to apply, because we haven't even.
It hasn't even been open for application just yet.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, we're getting geared up to it because there's such a big groundswell for it. They got a couple of things they got to do. They got to get their SAMS number and a couple of other things for tracking purposes. But once they get it, like I said, 45% of the reduced sales or up to $10 million, whichever is less, is what they can apply for, and that would be the grant.
And Mark, I think it's worth emphasizing when we think about neighborhoods like Uptown and Andersonville and others, we have a high number of entertainment venues in this city, and certain legislators in this state and in this city were very much on the front pushing to establish this particular bucket of funds to help these businesses which were deeply hurt. So make sure you double check. First, again, look for your NAICS code and understand that your NAICS, and I think it's the group that is coded, your first two numbers would begin with 72. And so you want to make sure that you are a code 72 group. And the SBA is requiring that this be the same code that you're using on your tax document. So if you're filing taxes now, get your NIC code right if you want to make sure that you're not excluded in that round. Because I think these are the best monies out there among all of those included in this version of the CARES Act. This is probably the most attractive pool of funds and one we desperately need.
Great, thank you. And with that, we are going to conclude the webinar. Once again, I want to thank all of our panelists. As we heard, there are other options besides, or in addition to P3. We had some great panelists from several banks join us, so thank you to all of you who were able to share how to actually apply for the P3 loan. Thank you so much to Ben and Randy with the Illinois Bankers Association for helping facilitate and coordinate with all of our bank panelists. And obviously, thank you to Mark and Carol from the SBA for assisting with this program. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to our attendees, of course, for joining. And we wish you the best of luck. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.